Welcome to this video on 5 number summaries. In this video, you will learn how to construct a 5 number summary from a set of data with either an even or an odd number of data points. You will also learn whether to include or exclude Q2, the median, when finding Q1 and Q3 in a 5 number summary with an odd number of data points. Let's begin. Did you know there are actually several different valid methods for finding a 5 number summary? These different methods can result in slightly different values for the 5 number summary. This video presents the method that should be used in this course and that is used in the course textbook. Please be careful if you choose to use resources outside of the course textbook or this video to help you with 5 number summaries. The methods presented in other sources may result in different answers from the method taught here. What is a 5 number summary? A 5 number summary consists of the minimum or smallest data value, Q1, which is the first quartile, Q2, or the median, second quartile, Q3, or the third quartile, and lastly, the maximum or largest value in the data set. The 5 number summary divides the data into 4 equal groups or bins. The size of each bin may vary. For example, the distance from the minimum to Q1 on a number line could be very small, while the distance on a number line from Q1 to Q2 could be quite large. However, the 5 number summary ensures that an equal number of data points are located in each of the 4 quartiles. For example, let's suppose there were 12 data points in a data set. That means that each quartile would contain 3 data points. In other words, there would be 3 data points between the minimum and Q1, 3 data points between Q1 and Q2, 3 data points between Q2 and Q3, and lastly, 3 data points would be located between Q3 and the maximum value. Q1 separates the bottom 25% of the sorted values from the top 75% of the sorted values. Q2, or the median, separates the bottom 50% of the sorted values from the top 50%. Likewise, Q3 separates the bottom 75% of the data from the top 25%. How to find a 5 number summary. The very first thing and the most important thing that you have to do is to arrange the data in order of lowest to highest. Then you can proceed to find the minimum and the maximum. Then you find the median or Q2. Then you can find Q1, which is the middle of the first half of the data, and then the middle of the second half of the data, or Q3. Let's use an actual example. So let's suppose you have a sample of 10 random friends from your Facebook account and you record their ages. The 10 ages you collect are as follows. Take a minute and look at this data set. Notice that these numbers are not in any particular order. Therefore, finding the 5 number summary as the data is given to us would be meaningless. The first thing we have to do in order to make a 5 number summary meaningful is to put these values in order from smallest to largest, or least to greatest. As you can see, I've done that with this data set. Once you've sorted or organized the data from smallest to largest, then you can identify the smallest and largest values. Again, if we had not sorted them, that would be much more challenging to do. So let's begin. First, we identify the minimum and maximum values. Since we've already sorted the data, it's easy to see that 19 is the smallest or minimum value, and it's easy to see that 33 is the maximum or largest value. From here, we need to find the median, or Q2. The way we do this is by crossing out extreme values, as you can see, until we get to the middle of the data set. Notice here, we actually have 2 numbers in the middle, not just 1. So what we can do 2 things. One is that we can find the mean of these 2 numbers by adding them together and dividing by 2. Doing that gives us 24.5. Another equally valid way is to find the median, or the middle number, what's halfway between 24 and 25. As you can see, halfway between 24 and 25 is also 24.5. Now we need to find Q1 and Q3. Let's start by finding Q1. We do this by treating the bottom half of the data as its own data set, and then finding the median of these numbers. Again, we cross out the data points from either end until we arrive at the center data point. As you can see, the middle of these 5 numbers is 22. That means that Q1 is 22. We repeat this process for the top half of the data. Again, we cross out the data points from either end until we arrive at the middle. And as you can see, Q3 is 27. We've now finished our 5-number summary for this data set. Notice that when we did this, our data set had an even number of data points. We had 10 data points. But what if we had had an odd number of data points? How would this process have been different? So let's try with n equals 9. So again, we're going to work with an odd number of data points. As you can see, I've numbered here the data set. It's already in order for us, so we don't have to put it in order, but we have 9 data values instead of 10. So again, we first identify the min and max values. That's not any different from what we did before. Then we identify the median by, again, crossing out extreme values until we reach the center. This time, we only have one number in the center, so our median, or Q2, is 24. So far, the process has been identical to the one with the even number of data points. So let's see what happens when we try to find Q1 and Q3. So let's look at Q1. So this is a little bit tricky because we have to decide whether we should include Q2 when we are looking for our Q1. So if we did that, you could see the middle number would be 22. And when we look at Q3, the middle number would be 26. Or should we exclude Q2 from both groups? So in other words, should we look at just 4 numbers and find Q1 of that group and Q3 of that group? And the truth is that different textbooks and different software programs do these things different ways. Some include Q2 and some don't. So what you need to know for this class is that we are always going to exclude Q2. And in real life, the reason that it's acceptable to include or exclude Q2 is because in real life we usually have hundreds, thousands, or even millions of data points. So, including or excluding a single data point is going to make a very small difference. But in textbook problems, because you're expected to do this manually without the use of software, we work with very small data sets, just again for simplicity and ease of teaching and for assessing the content. So it actually does matter, and it can be especially frustrating if you're using some sort of software where you're typing in the data set or the data value and you keep getting it wrong. So it really is important that you remember and know to exclude Q2 for this course so that you can get it right on a homework or a test. Again, if you look at the CCBC Math 082 textbook, that excludes Q2. And if you're using a TI calculator that does 5-number summaries, that will also exclude Q2. Again, that's what we will be doing in this course. So let's get started. So to find Q1, again, we said that we are going to exclude Q2. So we're just going to look at the numbers 19, 20, 22, and 23. We're not including 24 in the bottom half of our data. So once again, we cross out numbers until we get to the middle. As you can see, there are 2 numbers in the middle. So we can either add them together and divide by 2, or we can ask ourselves what's halfway between 20 and 22. And of course, the answer is 21 either way. So we see that Q1 is 21. Let's repeat this process for Q3. Once again, we are excluding Q2. We do not include that when we calculate our Q3. And again, we cross out our data points. We see that there are 2 middle numbers, 26 and 27. Again, we can either add them together and divide by 2, or we can ask ourselves what's halfway between 26 and 27. Either way, we find out that Q3 is 26 and a half. So we have finished finding a 5-number summary for an odd number of data points. So now that you've watched this video, you should be able to Construct a 5-number summary from a set of data with either an even or an odd number of data points. And again, you should know and remember to exclude Q2 or the median when you're finding Q1 and Q3 in a 5-number summary with an odd number of data points.